We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We have all kinds of scheduling snafus going on in the background this week.
It's all me.
So,
it's not snafus. It's me.
Well, I mean, Tom's got a hard out in basically an hour and 20 minutes, so he's probably going to duck out. I'm going to stick around, answer a few more questions, but I got to get going at the end of that too. So there it is. It's going to be a quick episode this week, but still should get to plenty of questions and topics, so should be fun.
So the reason for all that, one of the reasons for all this, there's a lot of reasons for all this. The first of which is that people have called me at the last minute and said, hey, this is when I have time for you.
Yeah.
Can you make it? And the answer is, I've been waiting for this appointment, so I'm going to do it. But at the same time, drywall has been going up in my house. So we are seeing repairs happening. And in fact, and there's somebody out in the garage right now replacing drywall. I just walked past him. Which is where the majority of the damage was. And then there's in two of the bedrooms, they are currently painting. Yep. I know the home theater got drywall up yesterday.
Yep.
So that's exciting.
It is.
So it could be, I have no idea. I'm going to go with optimistically 2 weeks and I'll be back in my home theater.
Yeah, that's probably optimistic, but things are progressing. There's signs of progress happening, so that's good. Speaking of which, you sound a lot better this week, so feeling better, I'm hoping?
I am feeling better. I will tell you, because of all these scheduling, though, there's a very good chance you're going to be able to enjoy the dulcet sounds of me eating a sandwich during this podcast. So
jeez.
I apologize for that in advance. But yes, I still have a bit of a sore throat, but it's just like enough to make me snore, and my wife is like, okay, I'm gonna murder you in your sleep. I'm like, it's fine, I don't really care that much. But it's that time of year, and sure I am better. Last week I was still feeling very rough. I sounded worse than I felt, but I didn't feel great. But I am pretty much back to full, I don't know, full functioning. Yeah, full frontal Tom. I guess.
Oh, great.
I have full backle Tom, too. I mean, it depends on what angle you're looking at. So, what did you watch this week, Rob?
Okay, there was no more new episodes of Invincible. They have taken a hiatus after the first 4 of season 2, I guess.
Strange.
There were only 8 episodes in season 1, so I'm guessing it's another 8 in season 2, and that they're releasing them as 4 and 4. Something along those lines, but that meant I had a little bit of extra time, so I watched an extra long movie this week, which was Babylon. Which is a little over 3 hours long.
Oof.
But you know what? It flies by, because my goodness, do they keep the pace up in this movie.
About? I seem to remember wanting to see that.
Right. So this is Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt as the two main stars in this movie, and it's taking place at the very end of the 1920s, the very end of the silent era of film, and the transition into the talkies. And so it's basically following 2 stars, one who's very well established, one who's brand new in the silent era, and then them trying to transition into the talkies, as well as the actual main character, the person whose life we follow the longest and who we see first and last in this movie, who becomes a studio executive. And so it's really following that story, but this is all like historical fiction, extremely elevated, doing things on a metaphorical level, and very much tying into how, look, if there's a theme to this movie, it's the more things change, the more they stay the same. That's what this movie is about, and it's meta commentary on Hollywood and the movie making process. But yeah, I mean, this had people who loved it and people who hated it. I can see why. It is extravagant. It is in your face. It is go, go, go. It's over the top. Everything very exaggerated, but for effect. Some of the scenes when they're first getting into the talkies era, I was absolutely busting a gut because, it wasn't, they knew it was a humorous situation that they were depicting, but it's not that they were like playing it up extra for laughs. It was like, no, that's a very believable depiction of what the very first sound stages, when they had no idea what they were really doing.
Right.
They hadn't perfected anything yet.
There's quite a few actors that were hugely famous until they had somebody heard their voice. And
That's right. And then trying to, develop all the techniques and technologies for like, people who weren't used to having to perfectly hit a mark, not for the camera, but for audio purposes. Right. And how you can't put a jacket down on a bed because it's going to rustle too much, and like just all these things that hadn't been dealt with before. The addition of sound, and then so that was really, really humorous scenes there. But I mean, Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt are fantastic in this movie,
as one would expect. Yes.
Yeah, I mean they are really, really stellar performance. And Margot Robbie, again, like just the way she can be in this movie, she is a horrible person that you would not want to be around in real life, massively self and other person destructive everywhere that she goes. And yet it's like she can reel you right in, and it's like a few tears go down her face and you're like, aw. Margot Robbie, I'm totally on your side and want everything to work out for you. She's fantastic at making that happen. It is a movie all about there is not a single person in this movie with an ounce of impulse control. That's pretty much the commentary on Hollywood. And
I don't necessarily know that I need to see such movies then, because it'd just be like watching my children, because that's exactly what they're like.
And so, I mean, some of the reason why some people did not like this movie, I mean, like, yeah, there's nudity everywhere, drug use everywhere, just completely, really explicit, over the top stuff going on. So if that is not your cup of tea, you will find it somewhat shocking. The very opening scene to the movie is probably my least favorite thing, because it is they're going for complete and outright farce, but it is just kind of scatological and gross. And it's a little bit of a shame that that's the very first thing.
If you don't know what that word means, I don't know that I would Google it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you might want to look it up in a dictionary.
That's why I used a word like that, because it doesn't sound too bad saying it out loud. And if you don't know, it's not going to do you any harm. But like the rest of the movie isn't really like that per se. So it's a little bit misleading for that to be the very first thing that you see. And then I guess it sort of calms down from there in that way. But there are a number of scenes, character introductions, where they have very famous actors portraying them, and I'm not going to spoil any of that because it's a little bit of like a fun surprise when they come on screen. But there is a bit of, oh, hey, them, and so it kind of momentarily takes you out of the movie while they do that. And then there are a couple of weird choices where, I mean, it is set in like, I think starting in 1928 or something like that, and then basically goes through the early 30s. That's the time period where the movie takes place, but they do insert some like, completely modern day scenes,
like cell phones and stuff like that.
Well, no, not anachronistic like that, just like scenes from modern day movies. So I mean, it's making the the comparison of like, this is the way it was in the silent era, this is the way at the beginning of the talkies, this is the way as Hollywood progressed, and it's still the same. You can still see it. So I mean, it's overtly making that point. So you can't entirely call it a period piece. And like I say, it's very much more historical fiction than it is a truthful depiction. So yeah, I found it very entertaining. I found it very interesting. It was not a movie I found myself bored whatsoever. I was forced to take a little pause about halfway through the movie, and I did look at the timestamp at that point when I pressed pause. I was like, oh wow, I'm halfway through this movie. Like lot has happened in this movie. An entire movie has taken place, and there's still an entire another movie to have to go. And I wasn't entirely sure what they were going to do, but they did not let the pace up for one moment. So it does not drag at all. You don't really feel the full 3-hour runtime of it. So yeah, I somewhat hesitantly recommend it because it is not going to be a movie for everybody. I can definitely understand the people who would shy away from some of the depictions and content that's going on. But I mean, I think you'll tell pretty quickly whether this is a movie you're going to be able to withstand or not. You aren't going to have to invest a bunch of time to figure that out. You're going to know pretty quick as the opening scenes go on. So
I feel like Moulin Rouge is that way too. If you like the opening scene of that movie is it's too much, and it's supposed to be too much, and then
so
the rest of the movie kind of calms down from there.
Take that and then hyper-sexualize, hyper-explicitize everything that's going on, and you're into that sort of realm. So there you go. That's Babylon, but it gets a thumbs up from me. I mean, okay. I like movies that swing for the fences and hit it. You know, they did what they wanted to do in this movie, and I give them all the credit for it. It's just not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
So I have watched some stuff this week, but nothing that I've completed. So I started whichever season of Rick and Morty I'm on. I think I'm at maybe 6. I think I might be 1 or 2 behind at this point. Anyway, so I started watching that, which is great. I still like Rick and Morty. It's a good show. And I got halfway through X.
Okay. Yeah.
Before I basically ran out of time, and then my wife came in the room, and I'm like, this is not a movie she's going to want to see.
Okay. And I'm very much looking for it. I'm assuming you were doing that in preparation for Pearl, because they did come out in that order.
No. Pearl is not on. I actually went on Amazon Prime looking to watch Black Adam or Shazam, the new Shazam movie. They're both on there to watch for free. And it's like, you might want to watch X. I'm like, I think I do want to watch X. And honestly, Rob, I think you talked about the movie. I can't remember a thing you said.
Okay.
So I went into that movie absolutely blind. And I was like,
that's better. That's good.
I had no idea what to expect. It wasn't what I expected so far.
Yeah.
So it is definitely got. I do remember you saying that it is a slow burn and a bit of it may be marketed as horror, but doesn't feel like horror, and it doesn't feel like horror yet. It feels like suspense.
I mean, that's the genre that's right there. If you look up the labels, it says horror. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I will finish it. I just have to time it right so that
I think it's a good personality test too, because it seems as though some people love X and then appreciate Pearl, and some people appreciate X and then love Pearl. And I fall into the latter camp, and I'm interested to see where you end up falling. We'll
see. All right, so this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to our website, find our show notes, as well as our Flickr albums to follow along with, plus older episodes with all that information as well. You can go to facebook.com/AVRant podcast, youtube.com/AVRant to see our live recording sessions. I'm still a logo.
It's true.
But maybe not for much longer.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
We shall see. I will say that the workers did break. Andrew sent that model to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that got smashed.
Oh, that's too bad.
It is too bad.
Yeah.
All right, so you can contact us directly, rob@avrant.com. His social medias are @FirstReflect, and I'm Tom at avrant.com. Our listeners of the week, I want to thank those who have supported the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and send us a PayPal donation. So you can do that if you like, but Paul and Scott did do that this week, so thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Scott.
Yeah, Paul and Scott, thank you very much for your PayPal donations. We appreciate your financial support.
If you want to support us on an ongoing basis, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast to sign up to be a monthly contributor to the podcast. We currently have 134 patrons. So I'm going to thank all of them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Just like Tom said, you can go there to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. $1 per month is the minimum that you're allowed to pledge, and then you can fall asleep on the zero key and we won't mind at all. So big thanks to our 134 patrons over there. It is into a new month, so somebody dropped off the list, and hopefully we can convince you to come back and bring a few friends. That'd be great.
There you go. We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through all the things that are happening in the world right now. I don't know what. There's a couple of big things, so I don't know what all the little things are, and I'm sure none of them are all that little to the people that are happening to. So, anyways, we got those from Paul, Mike, who wants us to do a 3-man show with Lee. Who? Mohsen, Jason, Davide.
It's right there.
Davide. Sorry, Davide. In fact, I was just watching some thing climbing, maybe. where somebody had that name and they were pronouncing it that way. And I was like, oh, that's how you pronounce that.
He
and it
is Italian, and it does have an E on the end. And that should be the
Davide.
correct pronunciation. I mean, I'm sure it still doesn't sound correct, but
oh, I know. Coming from my mouth, for sure.
Somewhat closer than just saying David. A little bit closer.
Jeremy, who says, thanks for keeping the podcast interesting. He keeps on listening even if he doesn't change his setup. And Jay, who says he enjoys going down the information rabbit holes, but he comes to us to help dig him back out. So no worries.
Those are the forums. Yeah, I'll repeat those names one more time. Paul, Mike, Mohsen, Jason, Davide, Jeremy, and Jay. Thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We certainly appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
So in the news, you may have seen a bunch of headlines this week along the lines of Samsung and Google's new 3D audio format will kill Dolby Atmos. I think finally my news feed has learned that if you send me clickbait, I won't click on it, and it stopped doing it because I didn't see this, because that is obvious and clear clickbait. So in reality, the Alliance of Open Media, which is probably most famous for backing and promoting the AV1 video codec, has simply announced the availability of IAMF, or the Immersive Audio Model and Formats. They say it's the first open source spatial audio end-to-end technology, and it was developed by Samsung and Google back in 2020 when everybody didn't have anything else to do. So they were like, they're like, here, if you're an engineer and you've got an idea, now's the time to work on it.
Right.
Samsung says that it is targeted for use with TV speakers and basic soundbars, and that its core features are vertical sound, user customization. Of course, they had to include AI in there somewhere, so it's supposed to have AI scene analysis to analyze scenes as they play and emphasize certain aspects such as dialogue. Yes, that's called algorithms, and there's no way AI. I mean, AI is
a fairly simple EQ could
or
also
EQ,
be all
really, yeah.
That's
probably more accurately what it is.
Especially with the user customization, which is like dialogue boost, and guess how fancy that's really going to be. Yeah.
Google says they helped develop the format to be open to all in order to allow people to freely create content with 3D audio technology and also spy on them. I may have added that last part. As a major backer of the Alliance for Open Media and having deployed the AV1 codec for YouTube, that certainly sounds as though they might be looking at IAMF as YouTube's solution for spatial audio. Honestly, my guys, my dudes, my gals, all those who are listening to this podcast, can we just stop with the spatial audio BS? Can we just admit that it is the exact same thing as everything else we've ever had, and it is very silly to try to put it in everything. I'm telling you, the one speaker I have that has spatial audio, it does work. It works just as good as every other fake surround sound thing that they've ever created. It works exactly the same, and it is exactly as limited. It's not magic. It's not like they're going to slam AI in there somehow, like that's going to freaking have a computer brain and be able to have, it's going to have what do you think it's going to have? Cameras in there so it knows where you are, so it can steer the audio based on where you're looking. Shut up.
Yes,
just stop it.
Virtual surround up mixing that was around quite a long time ago.
This is why consumers get burnt out on these technologies, because they keep getting told that this brand new thing is coming. The thing comes, and they go, "It's the same thing, except a new name."
That's right.
And they're all like, "Wait a second, I've experienced this before." This is why I think 8K will never really happen, because 4K burned that bridge when people took it home and went, "Looks the same."
Oh yeah, there have been all the reports about how the 8K TVs, which were never really a huge portion of the market, shrank year over year this year. So that is clearly being rejected by consumers. But yes, this new immersive audio, spatial audio, whatever type of name you want to give to it, 3D audio format. The headlines that were all saying, "Oh, this is a competitor to Dolby Atmos," or "This is gonna somehow take over Dolby Atmos." Like Samsung themselves aren't even saying anything like that. They're saying this is essentially, they didn't use the word upmixing or virtualization, but essentially saying that that's what it is. It's for TV speakers. Yes, Samsung makes TVs. It makes perfect sense. They'd want to have their own open source.
When did they get into the TV game? This is news. There's the news.
That's right. And they're, they're own open source, like I say, essential upmixing or virtualization things that they don't necessarily have to rely on Dolby and the Dolby Atmos format. They were reluctant to pay Dolby any of the licensing fees. They still won't pay them for Dolby Vision on Samsung TVs, but they did eventually acquiesce starting in 2022 to have Dolby Atmos support in there. So, okay, now they're going to have their own version, their own upmixer, much like how Microsoft has Windows Sonic, right? Which does the same thing as the Dolby Surround upmixer. They sound very similar, but it's Microsoft's version. This is Samsung and Google's version. And I mean, that's really all it is. It is absolutely not going to be something that you find on Ultra HD Blu-ray discs. I would not expect to find this on a bunch of streaming services. Maybe it'll be built into Samsung's own streaming TV service thing that they provide and have built into their TVs, right? That's probably going to find it there. And I do expect, based on what's been said about it, that we might start to have this as the format that shows up on YouTube. Which, look, I'm for anything that gets us away from stereo is the only option on YouTube. They dropped support for regular Dolby Digital 5.1. They are apparently another company that doesn't want to pay Dolby any licensing fees. So, okay, if this allows us to get a pseudo surround, a pseudo immersive audio format that regular content creators would be able to use for their YouTube videos, then that's good enough for me. That's justification enough to me for this thing to exist, but it's absolutely not a competitor or a replacement for Dolby Atmos in any way, and the companies behind it aren't even claiming that it is. So those headlines were stupid, but the real thing about it, I can see a usefulness for it.
Sony announced that due to their content licensing arrangement with Warner Bros. Discovery as of December 31st, 2023, which is quickly approaching.
It sure is.
Any Discovery TV shows that you purchased via this PlayStation Store, over 1,300 episodes in all, will no longer be available to watch. But it isn't just that you can't stream them anymore. The titles will literally be removed from your PlayStation Store video library, and there's no way to download them ahead of the removal. And you won't be able to get any refunds. All of Discovery's content that you purchased, not rented or subscribed to, is straight up being yeeted off your device.
Yup.
And you're just all out of all the money you paid for it. The terms of services say they are allowed to do this, and those same terms of services also say you waived your right to sue them over it. Everyone read that fine print super carefully beforehand, right? Right?
Uh-huh. Look, I'll fully admit I don't. I just click agree. Absolutely.
Sony did make sure to sincerely thank you for your continued support, suckers.
And look, you know what? I don't blame Sony on this. This is another Warner Brothers Discovery debacle.
David Zaslav is the best. He's the best.
There's no way that PlayStation wanted this to be the way things that went down. There's not a chance of that. I mean, they're the storefront that's having
coming to. We're defending Sony. Look, can we not get? I don't know that I can be okay with this.
I mean, like, things apparently got so contentious in whatever licensing agreement they had that they said we would rather take the hit of screwing over all of our PlayStation Store video customers. And I mean, it's weird that Sony didn't say that they'll make everyone whole by issuing refunds, but I don't know what the deal is there. I can criticize
because
Sony.
Nobody's really going to blame Sony for that. That's why.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, that I can criticize Sony a bit. But I mean, whatever the negotiations were between Warner Brothers Discovery, they're like, it's so bad that we would rather take this PR hit than deal with you guys anymore. So all Discovery Channel content just gone from the service. What a world we live in. Fantastic.
It's almost. I wish somebody had warned us that purchasing digital stuff would somehow backfire in the long run. I wish somebody had said that.
I will say, like, in U.S. legal matters, the provision that they have in the terms of service doesn't actually prevent a class action lawsuit from being lodged. So that is almost certainly going to happen. Because
everybody sign up.
The button literally said buy. It said that. Yeah. And so I think there's a case to be made there that even if you read the terms of service, a reasonable person might expect that if they click, that if there are two buttons, one of which that says buy and one of which that says rent, that a reasonable person would think that if they click the buy button, that they now own that piece of content, even if it says that, it's all part of licensing agreements and that the content could disappear from the service at any time for any reason. I think there could be a class action lawsuit going.
It's just so dumb.
It really is.
It's so dumb. When you buy something, I hate to say it. I know I know they want to call it whatever they want, right? And I understand that they don't want to let you be able to download it for all the reasons that piracy, exists and stuff. I get that, but if you're not going to let people download it, so that it is their fault that they lost it. Like I get that. I get people like, oh, I downloaded it to this computer. That computer broke, and now it's gone, and you no longer have it. What am I supposed to do? And they'll be like, I don't know. What are you guys supposed to do? The same thing that you would do if you bought a DVD and left it at a hotel. It's gone.
Yeah. Or the DVD just physically broke, or so in this case you had it on a hard drive and the hard drive broke. Well,
but if you're not going to let people download it, if you're not going to let them have essentially a physical copy of the thing,
or just
then you have to forever provide access to it because they bought it. That was your side of it. That's what you said when you said you can't download it.
They could have converted it to Movies Anywhere, but I guess part of it is that the PlayStation Store was never part of Movies Anywhere, so that would have been a whole thing to get in there. But anyway, for all the people who are saying, oh, this is why I only buy physical media, it's like, well, not all of these shows were available on physical media.
That's true.
So the people who are saying, this is kind of like why piracy is making a bit of an upswing and a comeback as of late, because so many pieces of content are disappearing from streaming or from purchased, digital purchase websites. It's like, yeah, I can see that argument. It kind of makes sense.
What else are you going to do?
Yeah.
No offense, but what else are you going to do? And it's like, oh, well, piracy is a new... No, it's not. They sold dual VHS players, like almost immediately.
Yeah.
They immediately sold those so that you could copy.
VHS players, right?
Yeah. And I used to do it. I had a dual tape deck with a CD player. It was my very first CD player. A dual tape deck with a CD player. Guess what we did?
Mm-hmm.
Burn that CD straight to tape so you could play it in your car, because there was no other way to do it.
The old VHS tapes, where the amazing copy protection that they had was that physical little tab.
Yeah, that little tab that you could put a piece of tape across the top of.
You put a little piece of electric tape over there so the physical button wouldn't go in, and then you could copy the tape.
It's amazing. Some engineer was like, they'll never figure this out.
That's right.
Let's get into the questions here. Mohsen appreciated Rob and Lee's discussion about potential audio upgrades for his blacked out dedicated home theater 2 weeks ago when we saw his dual SVS PB3000 subs, both at the front of the room. They both immediately suggested moving one of them to the back of the room, and they suggested keeping the sub on his front wall that is to the left of his center speaker where it is, and then replacing the end table that is just to the right of the seats of the back on his back wall with the second PB3000. The room is roughly 15.5 by 19 by 8.5. It's very black.
It is. That is a dedicated theater for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm scrolling past all this. He's not completely opposed to the idea, but it would be easier for him to put a sub in the rear left corner of the room. The front right corner has a door and a small set of stairs right there, so he couldn't fully do diagonally opposite placement, but would leaving the sub that's right to the right of his center speaker where it is, and then putting the second sub in the rear left corner work just as well. Right. And another slight concern he has is the length of RCA cable he needs in order to go from his gear rack, which is to the front left corner of the room, to the position of the back wall, to the position on the back wall to the right of his back row seats. He doesn't have any RCA cables that long on hand, so we need to buy a longer one. Oh my goodness, those are so expensive too. They cost literally dollars.
We don't know what his experience with cables has been, and some people will still, see the expensive cables that are definitely still out there are under the assumption that literally they need it.
Single dollars. Anyways, just worked. Okay, so the first question, just as well. No. I doubt it. Will it work well? Maybe. I would rather go. There's no. Okay, if you guys are looking at the pictures of this room, there's lots of empty space in this room. Sure. This room is not exactly devoid of places to put a subwoofer.
Right. You
could definitely figure out two mirrored, diagonally opposite positions in the room. Mm-hmm. For two subwoofers in here.
Yeah, the easiest way to think of it is this is pretty much an enclosed rectangle of a room.
Yes.
There's a little bit of a bump out for the door, so you can't call it a literally perfect rectangle, but it's very close to an enclosed rectangle, which means if we start with the idea that the optimal positions for two subs are going to be the middle of two opposing walls, so the middle of the front wall and the middle of the back wall, or the middle of the left wall and the middle of the right wall, those are our optimal positions. And then Everywhere else, we're going to try to keep the subwoofers as much across the room, directly across the room from each other as we can. But for every bit that it is not, directly across the room from each other, it's a bit of a compromise. So when we say, okay, you're going to keep the sub that's to the right of your center speaker and then put the second sub in the rear left corner, that is definitely an improvement over having both subs on the front wall.
Yeah.
They're definitely closer to being across the room from each other at that point, but it's not quite the same as keeping the sub that's to the left of the center speaker and then putting a second sub just to the right on the back wall, so that, if you drew a straight line from sub to sub, it would go right through, that line would go right through the very middle of the room. That's what we're aiming for. You imagine that there's a line from sub to sub and that it goes right through the middle of the room. We're aiming for that, but you're not going to quite have that if you use the rear left corner. But definitely an improvement over the two subs on the front wall. And you might just have to do a little bit of manual adjustment to the phase knob of one of those subs if you're picky about that and willing to listen to a bass sweep on repeat in all of the seats that you care about until those adjustments on the phase knob.
See, that's the kind of threat that will make
uniform
people
as possible across all those
make
seats.
people find spots in their room. That means that they don't have to do that.
Did I lose you? Oh, we lost Tom.
Well, I'm not.
Is he back? Okay, he's back.
I've been here the whole time. What happened?
I don't know. I lost you for a second on my end.
Okay, anyways, what I said was that's the kind of threat that'll make people want to find two diagonally opposite spaces in their room.
Sure.
Mess with that stupid knob. So, yes. Okay. We don't care where you put it. I don't care where you put it. I don't care where you put it. You could put that in the middle of the front wall, in the middle of the back wall, because those subs are just about the height of your stand for your center speaker.
Yeah. So the center speaker could go right on top of one of those subs, although putting it directly in the middle of the back wall would definitely require moving the seat, because that is
right.
The seat
right.
is
I mean,
right
as far as I'm concerned,
wall.
you can put it wherever you want, but just find two spots in that room that are mirrored, and then call it good. That's what I would suggest.
If the thing that was actually holding you back was not having a long enough RCA cable on hand to put it just to the right of your seat, I will definitely point you to Monoprice and let you know that, look, they have a 50-foot, very good quality, nicely shielded RCA cable in their subwoofer cable section, 50 feet for $9, or 35 feet for $6.30. So this is definitely not going to break the bank to get a long enough RCA cable. And I will promise you that RCA cable from Monoprice works every bit as good as some $100 or $200 overpriced audiophile RCA subwoofer cable, which is completely unnecessary. So if you were under the impression that it has to cost money, it definitely does not. This is very much doable for under $10.
Yes. So Lee and Robbie surmised that his budget for an AV receiver and Pro plus amps upgrade was $3,000, and that's about right. We suggested you go with the Denon X6700H, which is on clearance right now, with the X6800H about to come out. He had originally said he was interested in the Anthem MRX 1148K. The price is a bit too high for his current budget, but if he could afford it, would it be a worthwhile upgrade over his current Yamaha V2085? And what about the X6700H? What will he gain? What would he lose? I mean, I got no problems with Anthem in general.
Not at all.
No, I think they're perfectly fine and serviceable. Not serviceable sounds like I'm denigrating them in some way, but perfectly capable receivers. I don't like. They're not like, to me. Anthem isn't. To me, it is very expensive, but it's not necessarily you don't get nothing for that. You get something for it.
Not nearly as expensive as some of the other brands that they're considered, very much contemporaries of.
Exactly.
They tend to be less expensive than a lot of the other, little bit more boutique brands, which Anthem sort of falls into that category. But I consider them really quite a good value and a very nice receiver. So, I mean, look, if you were to go out and get the MRX 1148K, it's not something I would warn you away from. If you're just happy with that brand and you're very intrigued by Arc Genesis, their room correction program, then that's completely good enough reasons in my book to go ahead and do it if it's affordable to you. I would go so far as to say that, in my opinion, versus your current Yamaha RXV 2085, I would consider it an upgrade. You'd be getting a more capable room correction program in Arc Genesis, and then just obviously objective difference. Your V2085 tops out at, actually, I think that one tops out at 9 speakers, not 11, versus the MRX 1140 from Anthem, which can go all the way up to 15 speakers. Now, it comes with 11 amplifiers built in, so if you did go all the way up to 15 speakers, you'd need to add a minimum of 4 external speakers. But here's where we get into MRX 1140 versus Denon X6700H or X6800H. And in fact, just to simplify things, I'll compare the MRX 1140 to the X6800H, because if you can afford the MRX 1140, you can afford the X6800H. You wouldn't have to save money by getting the X6700H if you have the budget for Anthem's 1140. So what you have there, objectively, the X6800H can go up to 13 speakers, not 15. And you might go, oh, maybe that's difference enough. But I wanted to point out that Anthem, with their MRX 1140, it's actually a little bit confusing what you can do with its built-in 11 amplifiers. They are not freely assignable. There are quite a few restrictions on how you can reassign the built-in 11 amps. And furthermore, the built-in 11 amps in the Anthem are not all identical. 5 of them are Class AB and 140 watts per channel, 2 channels driven, while the remaining 6 are 60 watt per channel Class D, and they technically can put out 60 watts, but they kind of struggle to do it, and they have no headroom above that. That's according to Audioholics' very thorough testing of them. It came down to the point that those 6 Class D amplifiers, they're not even particularly linear, all the way up to 20 kilohertz. So, Gene at Audioholics, when he reviewed it, he's like, I'd be fine using them for the 6 overhead speakers if that were an option, because the overhead speakers don't matter that much. But he's like, I definitely wouldn't do any of their weird, like, bi-amping your front speakers using one of those Class D amps as the second amplifier. Wouldn't do that at all. Wouldn't use them for the front wides, where you want your front wides to very closely match the timbre and tone of your front left and right speakers. Didn't really think the Class D amps that are built in are good enough for that. And then because there are these restrictions, you don't have the option to use those 6 speakers to drive 6 overhead speakers. You just can't assign them that way. It's a weird bunch of restrictions that I'm showing in an image that you can look on the Flickr album or on YouTube. But there are a lot of, sort of restrictions on what you can do with that. Bottom line is, my suspicion is that Anthem kind of wants to nudge people towards just getting the dedicated pre-pro if they want to do 15 speakers, because I wouldn't necessarily feel that comfortable using all 11 of the built-in amps here, which means you're not just looking at the cost of the 1140 by itself, you're looking at the cost of perhaps having to get more amplifiers than you thought you would need to, thinking that you had 11 amps to begin with. So the flip side of that is the X6700H, the X6800H, that also comes with 11 amplifiers built in, but those are all Class A, B, all equal power and freely assignable. You can power whatever you want with them or without them. On the 6800H, you can individually turn any of those 11 amplifiers completely off to give you the cleanest preamp output from that given channel that is possible. So from that standpoint, the only thing you'd be giving up is, okay, I can't do 9.4.6 with the X6800H, but you could do 9.4.4, or you could do 7.4.6. And honestly, in the room that you have, I don't see that as any sort of necessity for going all the way to 15 speakers.
Yeah, it seems a little silly.
So I come back to, I had suggested the X6700H. I'm sticking with that as what I think is actually the better buy here. And then on the room correction side of things, if you go with the X6700H, you're getting Odyssey Mult EQ XT32, a very good program that already comes with it. You have the option of paying $200 extra to upgrade that to Mult EQ X that you would use with your PC. But if you were going to spend the money on the 1140 anyway, you get the X6800H, and now you have the option of paying extra to have Dirac if you weren't happy with Odyssey. You have more choice going on there. Then a few other things. The 1140, even though it can go up to processing 15 speakers, that is strictly with Dolby Atmos content. If you're using the Dolby Surround Up mixer, the most you'll get is 13 speakers because the 1140 won't put any sound into the front wide speakers when it's using its Dolby Surround Up mixer. Whereas Denon's will. The 6700H and the 6800H, they'll put sound into your front wide speakers if you have them. They're like the only brand other than Trinov that's doing that with Dolby Surround Up mixer. And then for DTS-X, the 1140 still doesn't have DTS-X Pro. So DTS-X is stopping at 11 speakers with the 1140, whereas the Denons can go up to 13 speakers. They can utilize all 13 speakers with DTS signals. So I think the reasons are there to go with the Denon. And then, hey, the Denon has Oro 3D as well. And they've even made it so that you can use any configuration of 6 overhead speakers to work across all 3 immersive audio formats now. You can finally use those top middles as your voice of God channel like you always should have been able to. You can do that with the Denons now. They updated it to let you do that. So there you go. I'm sticking with Denon in your case.
I'm going to link up that article I just published on AV Gadgets about Oro 3D. What's the deal with that? And the deal is it's crap. All right. So he has a completely different setup in his living room. There's a 5.1 Sony DZ350 home theater in a box system that was already installed when you bought the house. Never got around to removing it. It's only used for casual TV watching, but he's never been happy with it. So for listening to music in the living room, he set up his own pair of Yamaha F160 tower speakers along with the pair of Yamaha SW100 subs. He uses a Fosse amp to power those speakers. He also has a pair of Fluence. SX-BP2 bipole surround speakers on hand that aren't being used at the moment. So if he buys the 6700H or the 6800H for his theater, what's going to be the best way to utilize what he has? Should he use his current RXV to 2085 receiver as just an amplifier to assist the new Denon? And maybe bring his Yamaha Towers and Fluence bipole speakers into the theater to expand to the full 9.2.4 configuration that Denon can offer. Please don't, for the love of God.
I mean, look, I'd be happy to add some front wides. I wouldn't add surround backs in your case.
I think if he adds front wides, it just takes away from places he can put his subwoofers properly. And there's no world in which I think he needs to do that.
Probably not going to put the 2 subs where the front wide speakers would go.
Should he maybe bring 2 of the Yamaha SW100 subs as well to make it a 9.4.4 configuration? Definitely don't do that.
Definitely don't do that. Those SW100 subs are not appropriate for your theater and pairing up with the SVS subs that you have in there. So don't think that just because the number of subwoofers would increase that the experience would get better. That's a case where you'd probably be making things worse by trying to bring those Yamahas into the theater.
Yeah, you can't place 2 subs properly. How are you going to place 4 of them? Anyways, so should he take his Yamaha 2085 receiver upstairs to the living room to replace his Sony home theater in a box receiver, ditch the 5.1 Sony speakers entirely, and use his Yamaha towers, Yamaha subs, and Fluence bipole speakers to make it a 4.2 or 2.2.2 system up there? 2.2.2 is dumb. I would do that. I would do the second thing. I would take the Yamaha speakers upstairs, receiver upstairs. Live with what you have right now. Don't add any more speakers to your system, I don't think. Right now. Sure. Just get the
stick with the 5.2.4 with the Denon receiver.
Get the Denon receiver, and then slowly decide to add some speakers if you wish, which may require you to add an amp, but honestly, slowly, because I think you're going to quickly get to the point where you're like, this is not making any more difference, and I'm going to be like, yes.
And I mean, not only that, if he, so I'm in agreement. I say take the Yamaha receiver that you have in your theater right now, move that upstairs. I definitely agree with using your Yamaha towers and the 2 Yamaha subs that you already have in the living room. That becomes your TV and music system up in the living room. Maybe you deploy the Fluence bipole speakers as surrounds. Maybe you don't. I'm not really all that concerned with that. I would probably stop at 2.2 in the living room, and that's going to sound better than the little Sony home theater in a box
I agree with
that you already had. But that means you aren't utilizing that Fosse amplifier in the living room anymore, because the Yamaha is absolutely capable of driving those Yamaha towers, no problem whatsoever. So if you did end up wanting to expand the Denon in the home theater, you could take your Fosse amplifier down to the theater and it will do a wonderful job of powering your surround backs or your top middles or something else that you might add to your setup in that way. So I say you can get away with buying a minimum amount of stuff here, really just the Denon amplifier. And that's what I would do.
Will asks, what are the pluses and minuses of using a 42 or 43-inch 4K TV as a computer monitor, and specifically for an M2 Mac Mini, if that makes any difference? The way he works, he tends to have a lot of applications open, and his dual monitor setup using one HDMI connection and one USB-C to DisplayPort connection is still more cramped than he would like. A 42 or 43-inch 4K display seems like it would suit his needs, but he has a tight budget of around $250, and with that, it appears as though he could get quite a bit more bang for his buck with a 4K TV rather than a dedicated computer monitor of that size. He is not a photo editor or video editor or high-end gamer. Well, that's good, because Mac Minis are not known for their high-end gaming. The heck noise is that? I got workers in the house, man, so if you're hearing something that sounds like somebody's dropping pipes, I don't know why that's the sound I'm hearing, but that's what I'm hearing. So this display doesn't need to be the pinnacle of accuracy or frame rates. He just needs normal text-based apps and YouTube to look good and not feel so cramped anymore. He preferred to buy from Costco. So there's a TV model that they sell that would check all the boxes for him. So I use some bigger monitors, not quite this big. I use some bigger monitors, and I'm Windows. I'm not Mac anymore. But one of the nice things is being able to snap them to the sides and then use different parts of the screen and that sort of thing. And it can be convenient. It is not a panacea. I'll be honest with you. It does not work as well as I think I would like it to. No matter how big your screen is, you quickly get used to using the entire screen for what you're doing. And then it seems a compromise to take only part of the screen for what you're doing. You're like, oh, I can barely see this now. yeah, you can see it just fine, but you're used to seeing it so much bigger. So I think that's going to have to be sort of part of it. That's one of the reasons why I like more than one monitor instead of one big monitor is because in my case at least, I end up using each monitor for different things, and then instead of like spreading across.
But this would be almost like having 4 of the monitors that he has now. So
exactly. Yeah. But he's not going to use it as like 4 of the monitors. He's going to use it as one big monitor, and then he's going to get used to it that way. That's one thing to be just kind of concerned about. You've identified a lot of the things that I would have warned you against, which of course is frame rate matching, and a lot of times text can look weird on non-computer monitors if the frame rates aren't right and the refresh rate isn't right. So that's one of the things to be concerned about.
Yeah, honestly, I would say maybe the most obvious drawback of using a TV, one that is clearly made as a TV, as a computer monitor, instead of a very similar display of a similar size that is made as a computer monitor, is just the usability of the fact that when you turn your computer off, the TV will not go into like a standby, where when you turn your computer back on, the monitor is there and ready to go and will show you the image without you having to power on the monitor. The TV will, turn off and turn on like a TV does. It doesn't have just like a blank standby mode like a computer monitor, and sometimes that little usability quirk is enough for people to be like, oh, I don't actually want a TV. But as long as you're okay with manually turning your TV on and off just like you do with a television, then you'll be okay with that. The other little quirk in there is reading text on, and this is going to be a 4K display, so there's going to be small pixels. But all of the LCDs that you're going to find in this size at this price are using this now. Instead of the sub-pixels on there being laid out as red, green, blue in that order, they're laid out in reverse of blue, green, red, which you're like, okay, for video makes no difference at all. But for text, because they use sub-pixel rendering, where they aren't just going pixel by pixel, they're actually going sub-pixel by sub-pixel to try and sharpen the text, particularly when it's small text or any sort of colored text on a colored background that you might come across. Having that blue, green, red pixel layout that you find means that a lot of the sub-pixel rendering that computers use doesn't work properly anymore, and you end up with a little bit of color fringing around small text, or it just doesn't look as clear. Now, in Windows, they have clear type settings that are doing a reasonable job these days of compensating for that. I'm not actually completely familiar on Mac how good they are at dealing with that, instead of red, green, blue being blue, green, red. But it is just something to be a little bit aware of. You might end up using some of that screen real estate that you have to just make text larger so that it's more pleasant to read. It is something to be a little bit aware of. But To answer the question directly, over at Costco, they carry Hisense's A65K series, and you got to be a bit careful because Hisense has several series with very similar model names, and specifically the A65K series is the one you would want to look at. Now, $240 will apparently get you either the 43-inch or the 50-inch. There's no difference in the price for some reason, but the 43-inch seems to be not available everywhere. There's a handful of states that seem to offer it and then a bunch that don't, whereas the 50-inch size is readily available. So it fits the price point, and what's nice here is at this price point, it's like one of the few TVs you can find that actually has full wide color up to DCI-P3. It's really quite bright. It's got nice fast pixel response that if you are watching video, you don't get, or if just moving your mouse around, you don't get like a black smear in behind your mouse as you move it. And then it actually even supports variable refresh rate up to its maximum of 60 hertz, not 120, but it has a lot of good things there, and it has closer to a matte screen finish, so if you have bright lights in your room, it does a good job of handling any reflections or glare. But since you were wanting the 43-inch size and you won't necessarily be able to find the Hisense A65K in the 43-inch size where you live, Samsung's CU7000 series, selling for $260, so $10 more than the budget you said, but I don't imagine that's going to be the make or break. Basically, it doesn't have the wide color. It's almost as bright, but not quite. It has nice, accurate color, but it just isn't as wide. The contrast is nice and high, but it doesn't have the variable refresh rate. The pixel response is okay, but you might see some trails behind your mouse if you're whipping it around quickly. So overall, the Hisense is a little bit nicer, but because you might not be able to find it, I wanted to have an alternative that you definitely can find. And Samsung CU7000 is a pretty good computer monitor. It's not fantastic, but for general purpose usage, it should be very nice.
Michael has a new home theater room under construction. It's nearing completion and the drywall is up. Might be too late to ask us whatever question you have. All the equipment is going into a dedicated AV closet as behind the back wall of the theater room. The theater is about 29 feet long. It's not small. The installers put two large conduits that run from the AV closet up and over the ceiling and back down the front wall so that all of the cable and wire runs are accessed inside the theater from the front wall. No conduit was run anywhere on the theater's back or side walls. That was an interesting choice. Now Michael is trying to plan a speaker wire and subwoofer cable runs. Timing on this was a little bit suspect. He'll be using 12-gauge speaker wire, which he assumes is fine for the roughly 50-foot length, for like 500-foot length, but whatever.
Well, I mean, yeah, 100 to 200 feet, very comfortable. 50, absolutely no problem.
Yeah. To go from the AV closet up the back wall, across the ceiling, back down the front wall, along the edge of the front wall inside this theater to his front three speakers. But what about the additional length for running speaker wire from the front wall to a surround back speakers? That could be another 30 to 40 feet, so it would be worth having some more installation done, some drywall cuts made to add conduit runs to the back and side walls. Well, it would have been worth having this done before they put the drywall up, for sure.
I mean, for aesthetic reasons, that would be the reason to do it. But for performance reasons, you're totally fine using 100 to 200 feet of 12-gauge speaker wire. That there's no performance reason to worry about that. It would just be for the, you're going to have speaker wire running up the side and back walls to reach the speakers that are mounted or, on stands or whatever it is. So for purely aesthetic reasons, that would be the reason to do it. But if you're fine with the aesthetics and you're okay with slightly having visible speaker wire, then there's no performance reason to dig into your walls at this point.
Right. I mean, you could always do the flat speaker wire and stuff like that.
You could do the ghost wire. That would be, if you want it to be truly invisible with the ghost wire. I imagine that would be
cheaper than having them cut the drywall, to be honest with you.
Yeah, if you want it to be truly invisible, that would mean, a light mudding over the ghost wire and then painting the walls. But if the drywall is up but they haven't been painted yet, then ghost wire could give you an invisible installation. So that is an option there.
Yeah, especially if they haven't textured yet.
Yeah, and if you're wondering, that's Sewell is the brand for Ghostwire, but Monoprice also has an exceedingly similar, and they sell it for about half the price. They just don't have spools that are as long as what Sewell sells. And in your case, you might end up needing the longer spools, so I'll have links for both Sewell's Ghostwire and then Monoprice's version as well.
So he asked, what about a subwoofer RCA cables? The plan is to use a pair of SVS cylinder subs, one in the front right corner, one in the rear left corner. If he doesn't add any additional conduit and all the cables and wires have to start at the front of the theater, will the 80-foot length to reach the sub at the rear corner be a problem? Should you look into using SVS's SoundPath wireless subwoofer kit instead? You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. The cable is this is the same cable they use to basically to send, your internet all the way around your house and from the it's everywhere. It goes from the curb across the ceiling, or not across the ceiling, across the poles, or into the ground and into your house. It'll be fine. Yeah, you'll be fine.
And once again, for purely aesthetic reasons, that might be the reason that you want to make some cuts into the drywall. But in terms of, again, performance, no problem whatsoever. And with the subwoofers, you're not going to see them going up the wall or something like that.
It's on the back wall. You can just run another conduit through that wall right there.
Yeah, that one.
You know what I mean? Wall. And then you can, and at least for your surround back speakers, and maybe even your surround speakers, right. And then your rear subwoofer. I mean, I don't understand why you have to go all the way to the front of the room and then back to the back of the room. There's just cut a hole in the wall. It's right there.
Well, it's just like, they've got the conduit inlets in the AV closet that's behind this theater room, and then those conduits lead to the front of the room. So he was just thinking that's the way it is. But yes, if you just install openings that go through the party wall between the AV closet and the back of your theater, then that could be another way.
You could cut off 80 feet of length, or 40, 50, 60 feet of length on some of these wire runs you're worried about.
Yes, but even if you did use the existing conduit and it routes all the way up and over the ceiling to the front wall and then along the baseboards inside the theater all the way to the back of the room, you can again go to Monoprice, get a really good, well-shielded RG6 RCA subwoofer cable. For the 100-foot length, it's $18. For the 75-foot length, it's $12. So that is not going to break the bank, and the performance is absolutely fine. Nothing to worry about there. So this is definitely doable with exactly what you have. It's basically purely aesthetics of having some wires that are going to be running along the baseboards inside of your theater. But hey, maybe you install a little curtain skirt and then you don't see that at all either.
Yeah, curtain skirt. The old curtain skirt. Jason's wife are doing what they can to reduce their carbon footprint as much as possible. He wrote about how much vampire power electronic device. Oh my God. It's not that I don't agree with this. Okay, I understand. But if you saw the words vampire power and you did not think, well, this sounds like clickbait, then you need to go back and start.
Well, I mean, to be honest, he didn't even use that word in the email.
Oh, maybe.
I put that in there
anyways, yeah.
I'm sure. But that's not actually a clickbait term. I mean, that's a term that's used for that idle standby power.
Anyways. How much vampire power electronic devices use when they are kept in standby? So you start installing smart plugs all over his house to fully cut the power to devices when they're not in use, but with the convenience of being able to power things back on from an app. For his home theater, is wondering what would be the best approach. He has a JVC NX7 projector with a Denon X3700H receiver. His sources are a Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It uses almost no power. A Roku, almost no power. A PS5, probably a whole bunch. And an Xbox. Xbox just likes to turn things into heat. So that's think of it as a passive heating unit for your room. He uses a Harmony Hub for control, and everything's plugged into an APC J25 battery backup. That's going to be a little bit of a power draw there. It would obviously be a bit less convenient in terms of startup. But if you were to install smart plugs for the theater, would there be any downside to the performance of his gear? Yes. And if there were any performance downsides to using smart plugs in the theater, what we recommend using instead, should you replace the APC J25 with a different battery backup device? Is there one with smart plug-like functionality, or what about one with master-slave outlets? What do we suggest? So first of all, this will not work with a battery backup because the battery backup uses the wall power to keep the batteries charged.
Like you couldn't put in a smart outlet in place of your regular outlet and then plug your APC battery backup into the smart outlet.
It's just
because then when you cut the power to the smart outlet, it's going to just go onto the battery.
Yeah.
So that part wouldn't work.
Anyways. I am not familiar with the J25. Most of the APCs have master slave unit that you can use anyway.
I was gonna say, I mean, the J series is not something you can buy anymore. We bemoan that. Yeah. We lament that because we very much liked that series a lot. But it's a little bit of a shame he didn't go for the J35 when they were still available, because the J35 did have the master and slave outputs, but the J25 does not. I'm quite familiar with that, owning several of each of them. So that I tell you to replace it with a J35 because those just really aren't available anymore.
Just in general, as far as home theater is concerned, using smart outlets for your devices in almost every other aspect of your home is just fine. You know, all your lamps and your
certainly,
I don't know,
small appliances,
stuff like that is all just fine because they are not really causing huge draws at any given. They're not using the maximum power.
Like some of the small appliances do draw a surprising amount of vampire power. If you have like a dust buster and you have like the little charger that you put it into, that thing is often drawing like 5-6 watts when it's sitting there doing nothing. Things like that makes perfect sense to plug into a smart plug.
The problem with home theater though is that your subwoofers and amplifiers in particular need access to full power. They just need it. If you do not you can literally break your amplifiers and your subwoofer amps. I've done it.
And
that's one of the reasons why we often say don't plug your subwoofer into your APC, which is, you're like, wait, my APC is like this high-end device. Yeah. It is not that high end, and
there are particular ones that allow through the full 15 amps that we're okay with. But you got to be a little careful.
So it's very hard in your home theater to do this. Now you've got the battery backup, which needs to stay plugged in anyways, right? But if you were to say, okay, I want to take some of these other devices, not my my amps or my subwoofers, take some of the other devices and use smart plugs with them, I would say that would be fine. I mean, your Roku and your
Panasonic, the Blu-ray player. Yeah,
I mean, I see no problems with those, and I don't know how they would work with the APC. It should work fine. You're gonna cover other outlets because those plugs are usually pretty big, but there's no reason why I don't think that you couldn't plug that back, and shut those things completely off manually. But you're going to defeat the purpose of the battery backup if you put a smart plug on it. Plus, it's not going to allow all the power through that needs to come through.
Right.
Plus, you're going to risk damaging your amplifiers and your subwoofers by doing this. So.
And I will say for the consoles, PS5 and Xbox, there's two minds of this, right? Because you have the option of, instead of going into standby, just going to full shutdown with either of those consoles. Now, the reason why most of us leave our consoles in standby, where they do draw a not completely insignificant amount of power, is because the experience, if you're a regular gamer, if you game on a regular basis, the experience of fully powering down your consoles is kind of miserable, because we almost always have a game update if you've got limited time like I do and you want to play something, you don't want to turn your console on and be like, oh great, I get to wait 17 minutes for this game patch to go in there that would have been there if I just left it in standby, and it would have done it in the background. So that's a bit of a usability thing to be considerate of, although it sounds like you're willing to make those types of sacrifices if it means that you're saving some power. So good on you for doing that.
Until next time he's trying to have game night and his game won't start. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But I'm of the opinion that, so first of all, like APC, they do have smart UPS power systems that they don't give you like super easy control, but you can basically control them through a web interface, which I'm not sure if you're totally willing to go down that route, but they are remarkably expensive. They are, sort of $2,000 up. They're meant for like data centers and stuff like that. They're not really meant for home application. So it isn't sort of like a 1-for-1 for your J25 that has smart applications like that. I'm of the opinion that I think if you're willing to have the sort of usability thing where, stuff that would be on standby and downloading updates in the background, you're willing to sacrifice that. I think your easiest thing to do here might be to just go with like you have with your honestly, I think you can just sort of keep the J25 and just fully power it down. Just hold its power button, fully power it down, and then that's it. It's going to be a manual button that you press when you walk into the theater and power everything up. I think that's the far simpler way to come at this. You really don't have to
still have the
overcomplicate
protection,
this at all.
right? The passive protection of the surge.
It still gives you the surge protection, but it just
keep
won't
the battery charged too, right?
Yeah, it'll keep the battery charged, but it just won't be letting through any power to the devices.
And you might be saying, well, I don't need the batteries to be charged if the thing is off. But the point is that when you're using your whole system,
using something and there's a blackout, you
need to have the battery there long enough to help cool down your projector and everything else. That's the point of the battery. Plus, it's not great for batteries to get completely discharged.
Yeah. So I think, if you were willing to make the other type of usability sacrifices for the purpose of saving power, I can't, you're saying, I want to be able to just go to an app on my phone and start everything up. And I'm like, this is literally you put your finger on a button and now you go. So, you have to physically be in the theater to do that. But to me, that's the much easier way to come at this and doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah. All right. Davide in Italy. Davide. I think I'm saying it right. Whatever. We might or might not recall way back in 2020 when I don't recall anything before 2020.
That's right. Yes.
Jeez. When Davide wrote us about the big renovation he was doing on his villa in Tuscany. It was just as the pandemic was starting. We had no way of knowing at the time how all that stuff was going to play out. But now, almost 4 years later, the entire 3,800 plus square foot house has been fully renovated, including the entire roof being replaced. Surviving COVID was one thing. Surviving the renovation was the real challenge. And they will not be doing another for a long, long time now.
Yes.
Our previous input was valuable to him, so he wanted to share the nearly completed results and to ask a few more questions. This is in no way a dedicated theater space. It's wide open and spacious. There are no signs of any acoustic treatments. He knows there are compromises, but the focus was on design and functionality, and he's quite pleased with the preliminary results. So there's a floor plan if you guys want to see it.
Right? And we can see it is definitely an open space.
Yeah. He's got a dining room. He's got the kitchen. He's got another
something
room
over to the left that we can't entirely see, but that's open too. Yes.
Yeah, everything's open. Before we dig into his questions, he has some notes about things to be aware of. Other than the sofa, quite a bit of the furniture is temporary. The TV stand in particular has been ordered, and he's awaiting delivery. It will allow him to properly center and raise the center speaker, so don't worry about its current placement in the photos. It doesn't matter one iota, but let's go. It also won't be as wide as what there is now, so the front tower speakers will be closer together and farther away from the side walls on the left and right. Let me see what the hell he's talking about here.
Yep, images just below there. So yeah, I mean, now the center is basically on the ground and not actually centered below the TV, but he's like, don't worry, this isn't the actual TV stand. And then it's forcing the front left tower to be basically right up against the front left wall, but he's like, nope, that's going to be in a bit away from that wall and closer to the TV. So that part is temporary.
Right. It wasn't cheap, but he ended up deciding to replace his Yamaha Studio 8 series speakers with KEF R series Meta up front and Q series for the surrounds. He says, what a difference. Good looking speakers. They're very tall.
Lovely.
He bought an SVS 3000 subwoofer in their white finish. Everything's white. If you're not looking at the pictures, it's all white.
That's right.
It's white as far as the eye can see.
And it's very nice. It fits right in. It looks great.
Yeah, they do. And for the moment, he has it paired with the SB1000 that he already owned. The plan is to replace the SB1000 with another SB3000, but he promised his wife they would complete all the other furniture purchases for this room and the rest of the house before buying any more home theater equipment. She went along with the speaker and single SB3000 purchase, so no complaints from him. Thanks to our previous advice while the renovation was going on and before the walls were completed, he actually worked his way through Rob's 12-step guide to dual subwoofer placement, and he settled on positioning one subwoofer on, I don't know how he could have done that, but he did it somehow. And he settled on positioning one subwoofer on the left wall towards the front of the room, second subwoofer on the right towards the back of the room, and built into the custom metallic shelves that visually divide the living room area from the kitchen. He was skeptical about this configuration at first, but to say it works very well. The subs seem to disappear. I mean, they're in a box. At least one of them is. So whatever in the case. Subs seem to disappear, and he was able to have all the wires run inside the walls, so they are hidden. And so he says it turned out great. It was no additional cost to have the wires run in the four overhead speakers installed, so he went ahead and did it using his Cambridge Audio Minx satellites that lets him max out the capabilities of his Marantz SR8012 receiver as far as channel count goes, and every now and then the Atmos effects actually sound pleasant. was like, oh yeah, there's speakers up there. That's exactly what I say. So he's happy he went for it, and he now feels confident he will never bother to upgrade those Atmos speakers because why would you? He went for an LG G3 OLED, and he really wanted the new micro lens array technology, so it isn't as large as he would like since the 83-inch size didn't get the micro lens array this year. He had to settle for the 77-inch. One wrinkle was that he loves the included wall mount that lets the TV sit perfectly flush on the wall, but the inputs are not centered on the back of the TV, so he had to have a mason dig a channel in the front wall. Since it isn't drywall, the final results are amazing, so thankfully. So, all right, that's all that. Whatever.
Yes.
That's just all info.
But it was lovely photos, happy to see them, and happy that, for the most part, he's satisfied with the things that he purchased. He appreciated our advice, and the subwoofer setup actually worked. So huzzah.
Huzzah. All right, now for his questions. The speaker configuration ended up being a 5.2.4. This Marantz SR8012 actually has 11 amplifiers built in. It seems to be doing a great job powering the current setup the way things are, and he didn't pre-wire for anything extra. But with those extra 2 amplifiers on board, would it be of any benefit to use them to bi-amp his front towers? There is no world in which I would do that.
Nope.
There's no world at which if you wanted more power for your speakers, I would buy an external amp and just sit it right next to your Marantz and call it a day.
Sure.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would suspect that if you did physically connect the 2 remaining amplifiers, the 10th and 11th amplifiers in the Marantz, that the noise floor would actually go up. Yeah, that would be my suspicion. I think you would, if you were to notice anything, I don't think you would actually notice any difference whatsoever, but if you were to notice something, I think it would be a detriment. I think the noise floor of all 9 of your speakers would go up, and yeah, you'd be regretting having done any of that. So given that you also don't have the wires run and everything in here is very nicely concealed and all that, there's less than 0 reason. There's a negative reason to worry about bi-amping. Don't do it.
Yeah. So this pair of KEF Q350 surround speakers are obviously positioned much further back than what is shown in Dolby's diagrams, which are wrong anyway, so don't look at them. And they're actually farther away from his sofa than the front speakers. But since the looks of the room and interior design take priority, there's a very big opening on the left side. This is pretty much the only place to put them. When he ran Odyssey, he increased the trim levels of the surrounds quite a bit, but it did not max out the available range. So are there additional modifications we think are necessary, or is it okay to leave the surrounds as they are, and it's okay to go with the settings that Odyssey made? Well, I would definitely stick with what the settings that Odyssey made. So you are far away from those surround back speakers. So if you look at like the blueprints, because it's hard to tell from the actual pictures. That's right, yeah. If you look at the blueprints, and I'm scrolling back up so I can do that as I'm talking to you, he is just a bit forward from the middle of the distance between the front and the back walls. Okay, so he is closer. He's like, what does it say, 2.8 meters? So let's call it 3 meters. 9 feet. So maybe he's 12 feet from those surround back, the surround speakers, which you can't call surround back because they're not. They're just surround speakers. But this surround speakers are not like hitting reference level all that much and needing to be super duper loud. Most of the time, they are providing a lot of information, but they're not necessarily, to me at least, needing all the amplifier power that you have for your front 3 speakers. That being said, you're not that far. You're at the range. Like if you said that you didn't put them at plus 12, I'd be like, you need an amp. You need one. Right. But they can hit essentially reference level, according to the Denon, from where they're sitting without having the trim levels be maxed out. So you're good.
I think you're absolutely fine. Yeah, I know. I get it. The sort of disconcerting feeling of being like, my surround trim levels got set significantly higher than my fronts, but here it makes perfect sense. Your front speakers are capable of higher output than the surrounds to begin with, and then they are physically closer to you, so it's no surprise that your surround speakers, with where they're positioned, got set to the higher trim level, but you didn't max out the available range, which means there's no problem, and you will be able to hit pretty close to full reference volume, given that this is probably a fairly echoey room. You're actually getting quite a bit of sound reinforcement there. So no problems whatsoever. I mean, there's a little bit in my mind that's thinking I might like to physically raise those surround speakers just a little bit, but it looks like he wanted them at about the same height as the sort of kitchen counter thing there. So I'm like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. Are you getting the 100% the way the Dolby diagrams?
Anyways, I mean, who really cares? You know what I mean?
This is a little bit of a compromise, but it's all compromise that makes sense. So I think you're A-okay.
I would argue too that it's a little. We as North Americans specifically, we are kind of sensitized to thinking couches are a certain size, and when you get to Europe, they are not that size.
Yeah, this is a low couch for sure. You're sitting low, so the height is not really a problem.
Yeah, I would think that this would not be as much of an issue as far as how high the surround speakers are. Plus, it's supposed to be diffuse, so who cares? So his main source is a PC with a very good graphics card installed, although he does not do any PC gaming. He's tried out Plex, and the PC does have the Plex server software installed, but he's actually found it easier to just use VLC to play the disk backups that he has stored on his NAS. He paid for the Dolby Access app for his PC so that Atmos would work, and with the PC plugged into his Rant and the Rants plugged into his LG, it seems to all work correctly. He played the Dolby Atmos demo disc this way, and all the individual speaker channels play correctly, with his Rant showing Atmos on his front panel. But he just wanted to double check, is there anything he needs to do setting-wise to optimize Atmos playback via VLC on his PC? First of all, if you haven't had problems with your PC and your surround system, then you haven't been using it long enough, because you will. But more importantly, don't touch anything. Like, literally don't touch anything. Like, if it worked, it is very much, don't even power that thing down. Right? Just leave it go.
No, I mean, clearly the settings worked where in Windows he has set the audio output for the PC to be the HDMI output, which is about all you have to do as far as Windows settings go. Clearly he has done that. And then in VLC, actually it does a good job of auto detecting, but you just have to have it as pass-through mode, where it is just passing through the audio from the video that it is playing through the HDMI cable to your sound system, which is clearly what is going on. So there is nothing else that will like enhance or make it better or anything else. Like, you just want the sound that you're playing to come out of your system, and that's what it's doing. So you are A-okay. If you just wanted the reassurance, then you have done it correctly. It's relatively simple, and yours worked the way it's actually supposed to. So hooray.
Yeah, no, the fact that that worked is just amazing. What about video settings in VLC? He set his LG G3 to filmmaker mode, and testing out various disk backups. HDR seems to activate when it should, and everything seems to look great. But again, just to double check, is there anything else he needs to set to optimize things? Dude, you are literally the only person I've ever met whose it feels like whose PC is working properly. So don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Yeah, no, if it is correctly switching, and again, VLC is good at this, if it is correctly switching between standard dynamic range for, say, Blu-rays or DVDs that you might have on your NAS, and HDR for Ultra HD Blu-rays that you have on your NAS, then by all accounts, if it is doing that, then it is doing things correctly. VLC is nice software in that it doesn't mess with your video settings or altering the image or something like that too much. It does a nice job of just playing back what you tell it to play. So if that part is functioning, you're done as far as your PC settings go.
So he's been using the LG OLED's built-in streaming apps, and he uses eARC to send the audio from the TV to the Marantz. It actually all seems to be working nicely. This is the man with the least number of problems
we
have ever had in this podcast. Like, what does he want from us?
Well, I guess it's because he has
is this a brag? Is he bragging?
It could be a little bit of a humble brag. I think it's because he's got one external source and then one streaming source being the built-in TV apps. So it actually works. This is when
HDMI CEC works. When you don't have one thing.
The PC almost certainly doesn't have HDMI CEC, so that also helps.
That also helps. So he's thinking, wait a second. It all seems to be working out. He was thinking he'd wait for the next version of the NVIDIA Shield and maybe get one of those whenever it comes out, but he's always heard us say it's the best solution for Plex. But does he actually even need it? Would it be better in any way versus using the LG's built-in streaming apps and continuing to use VLC directly from his PC? Man, things are working. Leave it alone.
I mean, really, the only thing I can say is even if you wanted to switch to Plex, there's no reason you can't use your currently well-functioning PC as the Plex media server and media player. because you just would download the Plex Media Player software on your PC and use that to do things if you wanted to switch over to Plex. So you really don't need the NVIDIA Shield for any. The only reason you might get it is occasionally there are streaming services that the LG just doesn't have built into its operating system. There's a handful of streaming services here or there, and in Italy it might be a different situation where it's just not available, right? You go to the app store of the LG's own TV and a certain streaming app isn't there, but it is available on the Shield, or maybe it's only available on Roku or something like that. That would be about the only reason to do it. But otherwise, I think you've got an excellent setup that you don't need to change or add anything to.
He does intend to get a PS5 for gaming. His G3 OLED can check every box for 4K 120 VRR and all that, but his Marantz SR8012 cannot pass everything through. So he's correct in assuming it would be best to plug the PS5 directly into the OLED and then use eARC to send the audio back to the Marantz. Yes.
Yep, that is exactly what you want to do. That G3 can do a fabulous job with any of the gaming systems. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you've already pre-run in that wall, because that would mean you need a second HDMI cable to somehow reach the back of that very nicely mounted, extremely clean mount of your TV. So that might be a little bit of a thing, but hopefully you planned ahead for being able to plug in at least one more HDMI cable to the back of your television, the one that you already have going from the Marantz to the eARC port of your TV that you're already using for the streaming services. Nothing extra to do there, but you would need to run one more HDMI cable from your PS5 to the back of that TV. But that would be the way to do it in your case, and should work quite well, because the PlayStation 5 thankfully isn't too complicated when it comes to audio. For game audio, it really is just giving you either uncompressed PCM or Dolby Atmos now, and it isn't really complicating it further than that. So that should work pretty nicely. All right, I think Tom needs to skedaddle, right?
I gotta go.
So
yeah,
you got to go. We're just about perfect for time, so I'm going to hang around and answer a few more questions, but I'm going to get out of here before too long. So there we go. Yeah. All right, I guess we'll bid adieu to Tom, right?
See you guys. Good luck.
Okay, so here I am carrying on my own. Let me see. I've just got to set things up here a little bit behind the scenes so that I can still show images and be ready to, proceed forward here. But yeah, that means I'm going to get to move on to Jeremy, who is in France. Jeremy says, with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek and a wink, that he is all about unnoticeable improvements that require a ton of work. It's just his fun and hobby, this home theater thing that we do. So he wants to buy a miniDSP 2x4 HD and dig into Room EQ Wizard, but he has a few questions that he wanted to ask first. So as he understands things, he would use the miniDSP to optimize his dual subwoofers, sort of like separately beforehand, right? It's just going to be the dual subs, miniDSP, optimize them that way, and he would just have a single RCA cable that would go from sub out one of his AV receiver to one of the inputs on the miniDSP. That is all correct. But after his subwoofers are all set up using the miniDSP, he's going to run Odyssey. And yes, just confirming that's correct. Yep, that is absolutely the way that you're going to do it. You're laying the foundation, right? Your goal with the dual subwoofers connected to the miniDSP, and this would go for if you went to 3 or 4 subwoofers as well. Your goal there is to actually worry most about achieving uniform response across, focus on like a 3-seater couch, right? If you have some seats that are way over to the side of your room or something like that, that's going to be ultra difficult to make that completely uniform with like a 3-seater couch primary seat setup. That's what you want to worry about, like a 3-seater couch that is centered in front of your display. But what you want to do is achieve very uniform bass sweep results. And now that you're going to have, Room EQ Wizard and probably a UMic 1 as your measurement microphone, what you want to see is very uniform bass sweep measurements. Or if you're just listening to it and not looking at on graphs, you play a bass sweep on repeat, sit in each of the 3 seats of your 3-seater couch and hear a very uniform response across all of the seats. Now, I'm emphasizing that word uniform because you don't necessarily have to have the actual bass frequency response. You don't actually have to be hitting your desired target curve for that bass slope. You just want to be making sure that you get very uniform response, because if you've achieved that, if you've laid that foundation, now you apply Odyssey, now you run Odyssey, and Odyssey, as far as it's concerned, is just dealing with one subwoofer, right? You've set up your 2, 3, or 4 subwoofers using the miniDSP. And now when you move the Odyssey microphone around as you do, taking all 8 measurements, it's going to measure very uniform response in every position where that microphone is placed across that 3-seater couch. So now Odyssey can be very aggressive in its equalization of that subwoofer output. And so whether you're using the Odyssey editor app or using the Multi-QX software, either of those let you draw the target curve that you want your subwoofers to achieve. And now because you have very uniform response, and from mic position to mic position, Odyssey is not getting different responses. Like, hey, wherever I put this mic, I get the same response back. Now I can be very aggressive, equalizing that signal to match the target curve that you've drawn in the editor app or in the Multi-QX software. So that's what using the miniDSP separately and first is all about. It's getting that uniform response across the 3 seats. So when he's measuring a subwoofer with RoomEQ Wizard and making adjustments with the miniDSP, should he have his receiver set to pure direct listening mode to make sure the receiver isn't applying any processing of its own to the test signal? I would actually go so far as to say, for a subwoofer setup like this, you might want to just use an analog output directly from your computer and just plug that straight into, in this case, I mean, you can do it through the miniDSP. So you really just need a stereo left-right is perfectly fine, because you can, in RoomEQ Wizard, you can say, okay, play the test signal out of the front left channel. That doesn't really matter. All you're going to be playing is a bass sweep. You're going to set that up. You're going to tell RoomEQ Wizard that what I'm adjusting here is a subwoofer signal. It's going to stop at 200 hertz or 250 hertz. You can set that adjustment. And so there isn't really a reason to plug your computer into your AV receiver at all. As long as you can get an analog output, a stereo analog, very standard stereo analog output of your computer, you could go ahead and plug that directly into the miniDSP and send the signal that way. But if, for convenience sake, length of wires, whatever it is, you are plugging your computer that is sending the signal out, if you're plugging that into your AV receiver, then yeah, I'd go ahead and use it doesn't have to be like pure direct, it can just be the direct mode. That way, for sure, if you've already been using it and you already ran Odyssey in the past, that'll all be turned off. All the bass management is turned off. It's just, whatever signal is coming from your PC into the receiver is being output directly as is. So yes, that is a perfectly reasonable way to do it as well. So he asks, how many measurements does he actually need to take? Does he measure each of his 2 subwoofers all by themselves? Does he measure them playing together? Like a single sound that's being played by both subwoofers simultaneously? Will the miniDSP create different EQ curves for each subwoofer individually? What's the sequence of tests and measurements he is going to need to perform? So here, there's a couple of different ways to approach this. If what you want is to set individual trims, right? So like gain, like volume levels. If you want to set individual volume levels, individual timing, like be that delay or phase, however it's, set in the nomenclature. If you want to set those things individually and individually equalize each of the subwoofers, I would probably recommend, even with just a dual subwoofer setup, using the multi-sub optimizer software. The miniDSP doesn't automate anything for you. It is just a bunch of filters that you can program. It is not sort of any sort of automated process from the miniDSP itself, and neither is RoomEQ Wizard. RoomEQ Wizard, you can measure something and you'll see the graph of the frequency response, and then you can have it calculate an equalization curve to match whatever target that you drew, or, if you drew a perfectly flat line, it's just basically going to create the inverse as an equalization curve. It can automate that much, but it doesn't fully automate. It's not room correction. It's not a room correction program like Odyssey or even Dirac. It's just a measurement, and it's just a calculator for an inverse graph or matching an equalization curve to a target curve, and the miniDSP is just a bunch of filters. So the multi-sub optimizer software, that's the thing where it'll go through the process of taking a bunch of measurements in Room EQ Wizard. You're going to import that bunch of measurements into the multi-sub optimizer software, and then it is going to calculate all of the settings that need to be input into the miniDSP, and there's a way to import what it calculated into the miniDSP software so that you aren't having to like put in all those filter values manually. So it's semi-automated in that way, but that would be the approach to doing this. Now, there's a great tutorial that a person on AVS Forum made about using the multi-sub optimizer software. It's the initial one is 2 hours long, and then there are 2 half-hour updates to it. So it's 3 hours of content to go through. And obviously, I won't repeat all of that information here. But to give you a general idea of just how many measurements you're going to be taking here, you are going to be measuring each subwoofer individually. Particularly when you're using the multi-sub optimizer software, because the whole idea is that you can give different filter values to sub 1 versus sub 2, but then when they are combined, you're going to get that very nice uniform response across all of your seats that you want. So you are going to be measuring each sub individually. You are also going to be measuring each sub individually with the microphone in multiple microphone locations, because the only way you can achieve uniformity across a listening area is by measuring in a bunch of different locations within that listening area. So it's quite a few measurements that you end up taking. Then you're going to take all those measurements that you did as instructed by multi-sub optimizer. You're going to import all of those measurements from Room EQ Wizard into the multi-sub optimizer software. It's going to crunch the numbers, come up with the values it believes have to be imported into the miniDSP, and then you're going to want to confirm. You're going to now want to play a signal into the single input of the miniDSP, which is then going to send a simultaneous signal out of both subwoofers. Now they are playing in unison, but with different filter values being applied to sub 1 versus sub 2. And now you're going to want to measure again in Room EQ Wizard across your whole seating area to confirm that you really have achieved nice uniformity across that whole listening area. And then you are finally going to plug the miniDSP into your AV receiver and run Odyssey. And if you're really anal retentive about all of this, after Odyssey is run, you're going to send a test signal into your AV receiver with Odyssey active, and you're going to confirm the results that now you don't just have uniformity, but that you are also matching the target curve that you drew in the Odyssey Editor app or in the Multi-EQ X software, or if you're just using the default, that you're actually achieving that target. So oodles and oodles of measurements to take. That's why we say it's a very tedious process and a very repetitive process, but that's what you'd be in for. So he continues on. He's heard about alignment of the subwoofers with the speakers. Does that mean he needs to actually measure his subwoofers and his speakers, each of them individually or all of them together? Yes, to all of those questions. If what you want to do is confirm that your bass management is working as it should, that your speakers are rolling off at the point that they should, and that in that crossover range between your speakers and your subwoofers, you aren't running into some weird cancellations in one or more of your seats. All of this results in you measuring, things together, playing in unison. So like your front, left, and right speakers and your single subwoofer output from your AV receiver, but playing through 2 subwoofers via the miniDSP, you're going to play all of those in unison together and then measure in all the positions in your listening area across that 3-seater couch. And you're going to want to confirm that you have uniformity and that you're matching the target curve. If you don't have that uniformity and matching the target curve, then you're going to have to start measuring things individually and potentially applying equalization to, say, your front, left, and right speakers. There are 4 outputs on the miniDSP 2x4 HD. It's possible that you can utilize them essentially as 2 more subwoofers. This is where people really fall down the rabbit hole and start getting really nuts into this stuff. But in general, if you have that nice uniformity of your subwoofers across the listening area, then the crossover and the bass management works as it should. And this is more about confirming things. But it is a lot of measurements because you're measuring across the entire listening area. And then, lastly here on a different topic, he just asked, what is the most shameful thing that we've done in each of our theaters to optimize the experience? It's a funny word. I have to use shameful because that's what he wrote in his email. Now, Tom isn't here to answer this, so I will just quickly say that my response would be, I think the most shameful thing I've done is held on to my 3D capable television, right? There just isn't very much 3D content coming out anymore. I honestly don't use it all that much anymore. But yes, I have held on to that Sony Z9D. I mean, look, the shameful thing that I did is ridiculously driving from Vancouver area in Canada all the way down to Phoenix, Arizona area and back again. I did all of that trip in 3 days. What was it, 16 to 18 hours driving each day? I did that to get my Z90 television at a price that I could afford, because it was like, $2,800 more here in Canada. So it did save a lot of money to make that ridiculous road trip. But yeah, I guess you could consider that shameful. I think it's humorous, but it could certainly fall into the shameful category. So yeah, my 3D TV and my ridiculous 3-day crazy road trip all the way down to Phoenix would be my answer. All right, one moment here while I pause for a drink of water, because I don't have Tom to talk and cover for me. Excuse me a moment. There we go. So let's carry on with Jay. Jay is setting up his new dedicated home theater room. It is about 12.5 feet wide by about 22.5 feet long by about 7.5 feet tall. He brought along his SVS PB3000 subwoofer from his previous setup, and he will, of course, be adding a second subwoofer at some point. He asked us a little while ago if he should get a second identical PB3000, and we said that for his new room size, that isn't necessary. A pair of PB2000 Pros or PC2000 Pro cylinders would leave nothing on the table. We also said it would be totally fine to use either a PB2000 Pro or a PC2000 Pro along with his current PB3000. The PB3000 would simply have additional headroom that it's never going to use, but those two subs are going to work absolutely fine together. The thing is, he owned a PB2000 non-Pro years ago. That and the PB3000 were both great subwoofers, but he did think when he compared them that there was an audible difference. They each sounded distinct. He always read that dual subs should be identical. So wouldn't mixing two different woofer sizes with different amps and different cabinets be a fly in the ointment? So this is a case where I would say maybe a bit of misattribution, right? You're saying, okay, I compared one subwoofer versus another. I believe that I heard a difference. So doesn't that just make it clear that the two subs don't actually sound identical to one another? That is the easy conclusion to draw, but it isn't necessarily the actual causation of whatever difference that you might have heard. This was in a different setting. Positional differences, calibration differences could definitely have come into play here. Not to mention, I don't know how rigorous and scientific the comparison was, but just drawing the conclusion from a head-to-head comparison like that, I can hear the differences between two different subwoofers, which are honestly much more similar than different in every measurable metric that they have. That's a bit of a jump to conclusions. That's a bit of misattribution of what was actually creating whatever audible difference you have. I would be searching for every other explanation, because the objective measurable differences between a PB2000 Pro and a PB or a PB2000 and a PB3000, it's like the PB3000 has like 3.5 decibels greater headroom. But other than that, really not a ton of objective difference. That is a significant real difference in situations that need that additional headroom. But I'd be looking for every other explanation for why you were able to tell them apart. Or was it psychoacoustic? Did you know you were testing them? Was it a sighted test and you simply expected to hear a difference? And amazingly, you did, right? We would expect that to be the case. So I would think that's much more a case of misattribution, a bit of jumping to conclusions. But furthermore, you are now in a smaller and enclosed and dedicated room where we're into the situation where very clearly by every measurable metric that PB3000 simply has more headroom than you need. So when people talk about needing to have two identical subwoofers in a dual subwoofer setup, we need two similarly capable subwoofers, right? You don't want to have one sub that drops off a cliff when it gets down to 30 hertz, and another one that is playing down to 20 hertz, because now you essentially have one subwoofer from 20 hertz to 30 hertz. We don't want the one subwoofer that is capable of reaching full reference volume in this room and another one that is not, because now it's basically weakest link in the chain. That one sub is going to reach its limits, and now you're either going to have a bunch of added distortion as it tries to go beyond its limits, or you're going to get an imbalance to the wave pattern in the sound, where one subwoofer has higher amplitude coming out of it than the other, and you don't get the same wave interactions. You don't get that same uniformity as those waves interact with one another and bounce around that room. So we want similarly capable. We want both subwoofers to be fully capable for the room that they're in. But once we've achieved that, if one of them then goes beyond that and has more headroom available, that is sort of immaterial. You're just never really going to make use of that. So Jay has heard us recommend using rock wool insulation to make DIY absorption panels. He wants to make some 6-inch thick corner bass traps along with several 4-inch thick panels for the side and back walls. He was planning to have a 1-inch air gap for those 4-inch thick panels. He read on some audio forums that rock wool's safe and sound is not dense enough, and that he should use the more rigid Comfort Board 60 or Owens Corning 703 rigid fiberglass for the side wall and back wall panels, and then the even heavier Comfort Board 80 or Owens Corning 705 for the corner bass traps. But where he lives, which happens to be Southern Ontario, Owens Corning products don't seem to be readily available, or they're expensive to order in, and Rockwool's Comfort Board 80 is easy to find, but Comfort Board 60 has to be ordered. Meanwhile, regular bats of Rockwool insulation, including the safe and sound variety, are easy to find and they're affordable. So what are our thoughts on all of that? Yeah, okay, audio forum people, okay, whatever it might be, but the bottom line is that if you talk to Gick, if you talk to Acoustimac, if you talk to other, reasonably priced, using regular materials and not trying to jerk you all around and upsell you and overcharge you, if you talk to them, they will let you know they offer multiple different versions of insulation that you can choose to put in their panels. They usually have a fiberglass option, a rock wool option, and an eco-friendly option that's, tends to be recycled cotton. And they don't make any sort of claims of different performance between those different varieties of insulation. And every measurement and metric that we have tells us that it makes exceedingly little difference what insulation you use in terms of acoustic performance. You really can use the pink stuff. It's just that tends to squish and perhaps sag a bit due to gravity over time. So we like the rock wool because it holds its shape. It's never going to sag. It's very easy to work with, very easy to cut with any sort of serrated knife. You can cut through it super easily, make it the shape and the size that you want, and just friction fit it into a frame that you've made, and it's never going to sag. So super easy to work with, not terribly irritating to your skin as well. But then, the recycled cotton, that's a great eco solution as well. Again, it tends to be able to sag over time, so it's just a logistic reason why we tend to prefer the rock wool. And it's often the least expensive option too. But performance-wise, they all perform the same. So I will say the safe and sound variety of rock wool, no real reason to get that either, because they tend to charge a little bit more versus just the bog standard rock wool insulation. It tends to be a few bucks cheaper. About the only reason that a lot of people prefer the Comfort Board, type of variety of it, aside from the rigidity, is just that the dimensions of it, right? If you just want to basically not build a frame and just have pretty darn rigid panels where you can basically maybe harden up the edges a little bit and then cover it with fabric directly and just, pierce it directly onto the wall. Like the Comfort Board, which is meant to go over like the foundation, the concrete foundation in your basement, like that comes in pretty much like it's like 23.5 by 47.5 by exactly 3 or 4 inches thick. So it just for a non-framed panel, it's very easy to work with. But if you're going to be creating frames, I would just get the regular bat insulation, although I would probably go for the 24-inch on center rather than the typically more readily available 16-inch on center standard insulation. But if you're okay with either making some cuts or having narrower panels or whatever it is, the 16-inch on center still performs perfectly fine. But yeah, you can usually get the 24-inch on center. That isn't usually a challenge. And that's absolutely what I do. Save some money, get that if you're going to make frames anyway. But if you wanted the bare insulation and you were just going to harden the edges, you usually use what's called duct butter, the stuff that you can literally paint on your ducts to seal any gaps. That does a great job of just hardening up the edges of bare insulation. If you wanted to do that and have the dimensions that you want, that's where the comfort board comes in. But comfort board 80, perfectly fine to use for either of them. Just get the thickness that you want and the dimensions that you want, and feel free to basically use any insulation for your DIY panels. So continuing on with Jay, he ripped all of his CDs to Apple Lossless format and has them stored on his computer. Without buying anything ridiculous or unnecessary, what would we say is the best way to listen to those using his home theater setup? Apple TV 4K, or NVIDIA Shield, right? As long as you have them stored in a location on the hard drive that you can point those to. You can use any music player app on a streaming device like that, and there you go. That would be the easy way to wirelessly send anything that's stored. You'd have to, of course, share that folder on your network from your PC, but as long as it's a shared folder, you could use a player like VLC. You could certainly use Plex if you want to set up a Plex media server on your PC and point it to the folder where you have all of your music. You could use the Plex player on any streaming any streaming device. That would be the way I would do it, and that's going to play the exact format that you have. Particularly Apple TV 4K obviously works with Apple Lossless, so that might be the easiest one to use. And then he says, where do we go to get good quality music online? Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I've done all of the blind listening tests where I know for a fact I cannot reliably tell 256 kilobit AAC apart from fully lossless audio tracks. So personally, I just go to Apple Music. I don't know that Tom really purchases much music online, and that he's doing mostly streaming. So yeah, there we go, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, so yeah, I just buy from Apple Music. Okay, Infinite Gary is on our list here. Gary just bought himself a, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Sudgen, something along those lines, A21 SE, 30 watts per channel, pure Class A integrated amplifier. It's a year-end Christmas present to himself. So treating himself a bit there. He's always been after a pure Class A. 30 watts per channel, that's pretty hefty for pure Class A. This is smaller than I would anticipate. There's going to be a lot of heat coming off that thing. I kind of hope that it's actively cooled, if I'm being honest. Because yeah, pure Class A is just running full bore the entire time. And turning anything that isn't being converted into sound energy into heat. So they do tend to get pretty darn toasty. But yeah, his actual question in there was, do we have any year-end home theater or audio gear on our own shopping lists? So I don't intend to buy anything for myself right at the moment. I am going to wait until the new year in CES to see about OLEDs and micro lens array before I commit to making a purchase there. But I should be getting a Zidu player. I think I went for their Z9X version of that. Yeah, so I've still got my Zapedi Mini, which now the software option is there to replace the software on there with the what was the Revolution without the E there, with a underscore in place of the E. The Revolution software can now be put onto Zapedi players, so I guess that's what I'll do, because Zapedi, the software just isn't working anymore. But I should be getting a Zidu player for Christmas there, so that'll be one way I can continue just playing my ISO backups and my BDMV folder backups without having to convert them to MKVs, just get the full disc experience and play them back directly. So between the two, Revolution software on the Zapedi or the new Zidu player, something should work in my setup there. Continuing on with Infinite Gary, of course, we've all seen people lusting after more and more watts and bigger amplifiers, but on the flip side, what about low volume listening? If you only want to listen to a setup at low volume levels, you don't need oodles and oodles of watts, right? You definitely shouldn't, as long as you have reasonably normally efficient speakers and you're sitting a normal, 12 to 15 or less than that distance away, then nope. If you're listening at low volume level, you're probably going to be using less than a watt most of the time, and maybe for peaks that are 20 decibels higher than that, you could be getting up into the dozens of watts, but that should be about it. So Gary's experience tells him that he's heard plenty of high wattage amplifiers that seem to be rather poor at low volume levels, that the sound quality is actually not that great at low volume levels. Lots of watts on tap. You can get things up to really loud volume levels, but when they're playing quietly, they actually don't sound that great. He's come across some explanation of drive current, and that the more drive current an amp has, the more comfortable it handles low volume listening. But can we explain what specs or measurements tell us whether a given amp will sound good at low volume levels? Well, the major one that you would see on most spec sheets for amplifiers would be the signal to noise ratio. That's really going to be the thing, because as the name implies, signal to noise, if you're getting a really good rating of, say, 120 decibels of signal versus noise, that means that you're going to have a really, really low noise floor, and that when a signal is coming in from 24-bit content asking for a 120 decibel peak, that's going to actually be that many decibels louder than the noise floor of that amplifier. And that's really the spec to look at there. So, I mean, look, anything that's going up to, regular 16-bit full volume, which is 96 decibels above the noise floor, right? If you have a signal to noise ratio anywhere better, higher than 96 decibels, you are essentially saying that you have a silent noise floor versus the signal that's coming in there for any 16-bit audio. But that said, we of course tend to actually raise the gain on our signals so that we're reaching 105 or maybe even 110 or 115 decibel peaks. And now if the signal to noise ratio remains at 96 or 95 or something, just to make the math easy, right? Now we're getting into, okay, 10, maybe 15, 20 decibel noise floor. And that starts to creep up and start to become noticeable as we're boosting up the gain of our amplifiers to get to the peak loudness that we're looking for. But if you're keeping everything down on the quiet end, keeping that gain turned down on the preamplifier stage, keeping the volume level turned down on the amplifier itself, as long as you're looking at an amp that has, 96 or better, and most of the brands that we look at too, a lot of them are over 100, right? If you're getting over 105, that means you can play a full reference level peak out of a speaker and have essentially no noise floor going on at the same time. If you get up to that 120 decibels spec, then you can go to 24-bit audio and go to full concert level loudness while at the same time having no noise floor. So that's the major spec to be looking at there. The drive current thing, I'm not really sure where you came across that or what that's about, but signal noise ratio, that's the main one to look at. All right, I think I might have time for just one more here. So Will asks, could we explain some more about curves of equal loudness? How are they implemented as part of Odyssey's room correction? And how are they implemented or not implemented, as the case might be, in the case of Dirac, right? So going back to 1933, we have these famous curves that were developed from basically trial and error testing of a large group of people by Fletcher and Munson, the Fletcher-Munson curves. And I'm showing a diagram here, or you might be following along in Flickr. These are the blue traces that are drawn in here. So right down at the bottom, they're showing the actual threshold of audibility. That's what we're looking at right at the very bottom of that graph. And so, I mean, this is where we're saying, like Fletcher and Munson, they only tested down to 30 hertz, or actually a little bit above that, 32 hertz. And now we have an updated version of curves of equal loudness under ISO that was revised in 2003. Which is more or less what we're going by these days. But if we're right down at the bottom of this graph, we're saying, okay, down at 20 hertz via the ISO 2003 revision, right? Just to hear 20 hertz, just to detect it, the threshold of audibility, 20 hertz needs to be playing at 73, 74 decibels, just for us to hear it whatsoever. Whereas the threshold of audibility, and this is kind of interesting because we're actually seeing this dip into the negative numbers in the 3 kilohertz range, between 2 and 4 kilohertz, where our hearing is most sensitive. It's actually dipping below 0, and that's just because the room that things were tested in had a noise floor of its own. So we're actually saying we're able to detect a sound in the 2 to 4 kilohertz range that is quieter than the noise floor of the room that you're in. It can be quieter than the basic noise floor, and we're still able to hear sounds, in the 2 to 4 kilohertz range. But yeah, that's a good starting point. And honestly, the Fletcher-Munson curves and the new updated revision in 2003 are not wildly different, just in terms of the bare minimum sound pressure level that a sound at a given frequency has to make in order for us to be able to hear it. But then as we go higher and higher in sound pressure level. And so this is all centered around like either 1 or 2 kilohertz. That's taken as sort of the baseline, right? So we're saying that if our 1 kilohertz sound is playing at 20 decibels, and that's just the sort of like a fixed point, a 1 kilohertz steady sine wave playing at 20 decibels, or in this case, like 20 decibels louder than the noise floor of the room, then at what sound pressure level do all the other frequencies other than 1 kilohertz have to play for us to perceive it with our human hearing as being the same volume level, right? So you play a sweep of all the audible frequencies, and we want to perceive that sweep as being the same volume level throughout. Turns out because our human hearing is not linear, that we actually need to play those frequencies at different sound pressure levels for our human hearing, our brain, to perceive them as having all been the same volume levels. So we're seeing that we basically always have to play the bass louder than the mid-range and the mid-range frequencies. We have to play those louder. We can in fact play between 2 and 4 kilohertz quieter than we play the 1 kilohertz sine wave. We can play those quieter and still perceive it as being the same volume level. And then once we get above 5 kilohertz, we start to have to go louder again, because our most accurate and critical hearing is in that mid-range, which makes sense. It's the human vocal range. It's where the consonant sounds are. That's what we're most attuned to. So as we keep increasing the volume level of that 1 kilohertz starting point, it starts to flatten out, and right up at about 80 decibels louder than the floor, the noise floor of the room that you're in. Once we're playing a 1 kilohertz sine wave, steady sine wave, 80 decibels louder than that. According to Fletcher Munson back in the day in 1933, like we're getting much, much closer to just sort of a flat line even down into the bass. Now, the 2003 revision, more accurate testing has been done, better equipment was available in use. We're still seeing a big old bass boost there, all the way down to 20 hertz. And again, Fletcher Munson didn't test all the way down to 20 hertz. We're still seeing a bass boost there in order to make that. It's not the same close to flat line that we had back with Fletcher Munson. And then all the way up at 100 decibels louder than the noise floor. That's where they're saying, okay, that's threshold of pain. We really can't go too much louder than that before we just, are just holding our ears and trying to get out of that room. And that's very close to getting to a flat line. But in the 2003 revision, still getting louder than that, right down at 20 hertz in order for us to perceive it as being all equally loud. So those are our curves of equal loudness. These are how loud you have to play a given frequency in order for it to be perceived by us as being equally loud to a 1 kilohertz sine wave at a given decibel level. So Odyssey has dynamic EQ. That's the name that they give to their version of curves of equal loudness. And these are just some additional equalization that is applied to the signal every time you lower the master volume level. So if you set the master volume to 0 dB and you've run through the Odyssey calibration process, it's saying, okay, 85 decibels is going to be 85 decibels basically no matter what the frequency is. It's going to output 85 decibels as 85 decibels, and that's going to be closer to that old Fletcher Munson curve, which was getting close to a flat line at 80 to 85 decibels. That's just what it's going to be. You turn down the volume by 10 decibels, you turn down the master volume by 20, by 30, by 40, and it starts applying this equalization curve to all of your speakers to more closely match those curves of equal loudness so that you will continue to perceive all the sounds at the various frequencies at these lower volume levels as still being equal to one another. That's the goal of Odyssey Dynamic EQ. And of course, these curves are not matching the new 2003 revisions. So there are the people who say, okay, that's why you need the Odyssey Editor app or a Multi-QX or Dirac to draw curves that more closely match the curves of equal loudness that have been revised as of 2003, because the Odyssey target curves don't perfectly match that. They're closer and even a bit more subtle than the Fletcher Munson curves. They're not overly aggressive. Now, they weren't going for pure equal loudness because they're saying, okay, if you've been turning down the volume, the master volume to minus 40, you probably don't want the bass thumping away at what is truly equally perceptible volume. You probably want the bass to have gotten quieter. So the curves that Dynamic EQ is applying to the signal are more subtle, not as aggressive as even the Fletcher Munson curves, and definitely not as much as the revised 2003 curves. Over in Dirac land, they don't have an automated curves of equal loudness. If you want to listen to different volume levels, if you're like, yeah, I listen to movies at 0 dB on the master volume, but I listen to TV at, minus 10 or minus 15, and I listen to music at minus 20 or something along those lines. You're going to have to create your own target curves and save them in the various save slots that are available in Dirac. That's the way you're going to have to do it, and you're going to have to manually switch to your chosen target curve based on the master volume setting that you've chosen. You're going to have to do that manually, whereas Dynamic EQ does it automatically, and Dynamic EQ gives you the option of creating an offset, a reference level offset, so that those curves aren't going to be applied until you get to, instead of starting at anywhere below 0 dB on the master volume, you can set it so, okay, those curves don't start being applied until you get to minus 5 and below, or minus 10 and below, or minus 15 and below. So a lot of people find that helpful for music, because music is often mastered at a louder volume. Okay, I think I can squeeze in just one last one here from Paul. Paul likes to use his iPad to select the music he wants to listen to from Tidal Hi-Fi. He has an app on his iPad called M-Connect that allows him to stream music directly from his iPad Tidal app to his Denon receiver via DLNA. When he checks the info screen in his Denon, it says the audio stream is using the FLAC audio format. That stands for free lossless audio codec. He also has an NVIDIA Shield plugged into his receiver, and he can cast Tidal from his iPad to that. If he checks the info screen for that, it says the audio signal is 44.1 kilohertz PCM. PCM stands for pulse code modulation. So is one method better than the other? Both FLAC and PCM are supposed to be lossless, right? Are both methods delivering the lossless CD quality that Tidal Hi-Fi claims to be offering? Short answer is yes. PCM, pulse code modulation, is uncompressed audio. It is lossless, and it is in fact what all other audio formats other than direct stream digital that is used on super audio CDs, all other audio formats, when you talk about decoding audio, right, we talk about decoding Dolby Digital, or in this case, decoding FLAC, free lossless audio codec, what it gets decoded into is PCM. That's the final form. It's just uncompressed raw audio, right? If it's 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz CD quality audio, that means there are 16-bit words, right? 16 ones and zeros. That's your sample, and we take a sample every 44.1 thousandth of a second. We take a 16 ones and zeros to represent the volume level of the sample of the audio, 44.1 thousand times a second. And that is what PCM audio is, completely uncompressed, lossless audio. FLAC just data compresses that, so that your storage space is less and the bandwidth you use on your network is less. But once it is decoded, it's completely lossless. It's bit for bit identical. What went into the FLAC encoder is exactly what comes out of the FLAC decoder, with nothing lost whatsoever. So they are completely equivalent to each other, and there's really no downside to using one or the other in your case. All right, so Nathan and Mike are on the list. You guys will be first up next week. And so I'll quickly go back to the top to thank our listeners of the week. Thank you to Paul and Scott for donating via PayPal. Thank you to our 134 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. And thank you so much to Paul, Mike, Mohsen, Jason, Davide, Jeremy, and Jay for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We super duper appreciate it. Big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. If you want your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. Email us at question@avrant.com. So on behalf of Tom Antry and for AVRant, my name is Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.